Like I have said multiple times in previous episodes, the video game industry began formally a little over 50 years ago. A lot of the games that were popular back then may not be enjoyable to play today, but without the lessons they gave us, the video game industry might not have been as huge as it is today. Then again, things are not that good today. Yes, the games we have look and feel much better, but there are also many warning signs that we are headed in a dangerous direction. The future of video games is going to be very depressing if certain mistakes that we're making today are not corrected. In this video, let us talk a bit about the past of video games and then a little about what the future might be like. As someone who grew up in the 90s, I was fortunate enough to witness several key moments in the evolution of the video game industry. From cartridges to CD-ROMs, to Blu-ray discs, to completely online gaming through the cloud, we have certainly come a long way. Video games in the 70s and 80s were dominated by companies like Atari, Activision, and Nintendo. Nintendo can be credited for almost single-handedly saving the console game market, because for the period between 1983 to 85, the video game market in the US crashed, and it almost seemed like it would never recover again. But Nintendo's home console, the Nintendo Entertainment System, brought fresh interest into the market, and it has never stopped growing since then. Nintendo had a strong competitor in Sega for a while, but things were about to change. In the 90s, Sony, a company that had nothing to do with video games until then, entered the market with the first PlayStation. PlayStation's games appeared more mature and fleshed out with more engaging stories and characters. And within the span of a few years, Sony became a household name, even beating the more established Nintendo and Sega. In the 2000s, at the dawn of the 21st century, yet another company wanted its share of the market. Microsoft entered the arena with its Xbox console, and together with a strong launch title in the form of Halo Combat Evolved, offered strong competition to Sony's PlayStation 2. Nintendo was still present in the market, but was now like an old man running a race full of youngsters. So instead of trying to compete with Sony and Microsoft, Nintendo decided to do something different. While Xbox and PlayStation competed with each other to offer more powerful hardware to attract a hardcore gaming audience, Nintendo focused on a console that would try to change the way you played games and would appeal to a wider audience. The result of these efforts was the revolutionary Wii console, released in 2006. The console would feature motion tracking controls that allowed you to perform physical actions that would be mimicked inside the game. This was a huge hit and introduced millions of people to video games. Soon after that, the world was introduced to the iPhone, and it didn't take long for an entirely new gaming market to take shape. In the 2010s, the mobile gaming market started to grow at a never-before-seen pace, powered by the portability of smartphones and the widespread availability of mobile internet networks. Video games were now introduced to a whole new audience, which included people who didn't want to purchase expensive hardware just to play games. Now they could play games on the same device that they used to make phone calls. But this didn't mean that the traditional gaming market was dying. Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo continued developing new hardware, and we got the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch in this decade. We also witnessed the growth of a new form of gaming, virtual and mixed reality. Although VR headsets had been available in some form or the other since the 90s, this was the first time that they were seriously developed as gaming devices. And while they haven't found the same level of success as home consoles or smartphones, millions of people do enjoy VR gaming today. And that brings us to the present, which is the decade of the 2020s. We have already seen two console launches at the start of this decade with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and S. Apple is going to launch its Vision Pro headset soon, and Nintendo is expected to launch a new Switch console as well. But there's not much fun in talking about the present, so let us now visit the future. If we continue the discussion about gaming hardware, then the future is easy to predict. Companies will continue releasing gaming hardware that keep getting more and more powerful or offer some gimmicky user input feature, and this will continue until customers keep buying them. True cloud gaming, which was last attempted by Google Stadia, still has a chance to take off in the future, but that is largely dependent on the quality of internet services available across the world. But talking beyond just gaming hardware, what can we expect in the world of video games? If things continue the way they are right now, then companies will continue trying to get more people addicted to the games that they are playing in the present, which is quite dangerous. I believe that sooner or later, more people will realize that spending money on microtransactions is a silly idea, since they could be spending it on more useful things like food and fuel, which are likely going to be more expensive in the future. So game publishers will have to come up with new methods to convince customers to pay extra money for games that they have already purchased. I would love to see smaller games of 2 to 3 hours each developed by AAA studios that don't need hundreds of millions of dollars of development cost. A smaller AAA experience will not only reduce development costs but also encourages customers to try playing more games, which would help the entire ecosystem. I am hopeful that the future of video games will be bright because what's happening in the real world is certainly a bit dark, and video games have always worked as a good coping mechanism. But for that to happen, the market leaders will have to work together to get rid of a few greedy practices and focus on improving the player experience rather than improving their quarterly results. That concludes the first season of QC Done. We have covered a lot of ground this season, although we haven't really gone too deep into any topic. There's a lot to explore in the world of video games, and that's what I plan to do in the future. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next season.